What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Ice by Game Changer. Today, me and Kevin are going to be going over my weekly power rankings. This week, it is week 25, and we are now just a week and a half away from the end of the NHL's regular season. In today's episode, we're going to be going over my power rankings, my thoughts on why three teams that might surprise you that aren't in the top 10, why I didn't put them in the top 10, and then a brief look at the 4 games that are going to be played in Wednesday night hockey. So I'm just going to jump right into it and list the top 10 teams, in my opinion, right now. And then me and Kevin are going to take a deeper look into why we placed the teams where we placed, because unlike last week, we did take a fair amount of time, I would say. It was a solid amount of time to decide how our top 10 was going to shape out. But we did come to a general consensus, and we are on the same page for all 10 teams. So, number 10, Toronto. Number 9, Montreal. Number 8, Carolina. Number 7, Pittsburgh. Number 6, St. Louis. Number 5, Vegas. Number 4, Calgary. Number 3, Washington. Number 2, Boston. And number 1, Tampa Bay. So, Kevin, do you want to jump into Tampa Bay at number 1 real quick?
Yeah, definitely. Starting off with Tampa Bay, get right into it. They're 8-2-0 in their last 10. They came into this week on a nice little multi-game winning streak. They beat the Capitals and the Canes to make it 7 games in a row. And then, surprisingly to me, they got taken down by the Blues, who, have been surging a little bit lately, but still a bit of a surprise to see them take down Tampa. And then most recently, they beat the Bruins 5-4, coming back from a 2-point deficit in the third period. And so far this March, they've beaten the Leafs, the Caps, and the Bruins, which is a pretty impressive feat going into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, they've beaten the Capitals this month, and they're going to have a rematch in Tampa Bay against Washington on Saturday. That could be a preview of the Eastern Conference Finals very well, because both teams who lead their divisions and do appear to be playing very good hockey right now. Also interesting, Tampa Bay has a goal differential of plus 100. I don't really remember the last time I saw a team hit 3 figures in their goal differential.
No, that's crazy.
They are in the top 2 on special teams for penalty kill and power play. They have the best power play and the second best penalty kill in the league. If Tampa Bay wins out for the rest of the season, they will tie the 1977 Montreal Canadiens for best regular season ever with 132 points. There's 2 little important facts that I think are important to recognize. In 1977, that season did only have 80 regular season games, and there was no overtime or shootouts. It was just a tie. So if you were tied at the end of regulation, there was no opportunity for you to win in overtime or lose in overtime. And that Montreal Canadiens team had 60 wins, 8 losses, and 12 ties, and they outscored their opponents by 216 goals. So we're saying how it's crazy that Tampa Bay has a goal differential of plus 100. Well, that Montreal Canadiens team had a goal differential of plus 216, which is just unreal. But if Tampa Bay win out, yeah, it's true. It's a different game. And if Tampa Bay does win out, just the fact that they'll tie them with 132 points is just a remarkable milestone for that team.
All right, so I'm going to hop into number 2, which is the Boston Bruins. They're 6-4-0 in their last 10. And they had a nice 4-game win streak going before it was ended by none other than Tampa Bay, of course. Teams coming back against them seem to be a little bit of a problem for the Bruins lately. We saw it most recently with Tampa Bay. I think they've had that problem in their last few games where they're just letting up some bad goals at the end. However, if you're looking at the players, their interviews, their interactions on and off the ice, they seem to be very confident in how they're playing and their team as a whole. So I think that's definitely a positive for them right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as Bruins players and as an organization, their goal right now it's the Tampa Bay Lightning already clinched the President's Trophy, so there's no hope in like catching them. That's not possible. But I think their main goal right now is just solidifying that second seed so they do have home ice because they are very dominant at home with a record of 28-7-3. And I'd like to mention that I believe Boston has the best goalie duo in the league this year. Tuukka Rask, their starter, has a save percentage of .915 and a goals against average of 2.42 goals against a game. And he's also recorded 4 shutouts. That's solid for a starter in itself. However, their backup, Halak, who they got in this offseason, has a save percentage of .924 and a goals against average of 2.31 and has also recorded 4 shutouts himself. So if Rask does start to have some struggles that we have seen him have in the playoffs before, in my opinion, you just got to put Halak in, and hopefully Halak can hold the Bruins in that playoff spot. I do see that Boston and Toronto are going to play each other in that first round, but I think it's crucial that Boston solidifies that second seed as soon as possible so they can rest a few of their guys for maybe 1 or 2 games. And they do have the 3rd best power play in the league, which is huge heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. To go off your goalie thing, we saw something similar last year with Khudobin being their backup and him putting up some solid numbers as well. So you've got to think a little bit of it has to do with the defense and the team as a whole playing in front of them. So I feel like if we do see Rask move up and down, Halak's still going to be there to definitely get them into the playoffs and hopefully guide them through a few rounds.
Yeah, they've already solidified a spot in the playoffs. It's just a matter of how far can this Bruins team go, because I feel as a Bruins fan, it's just like Tampa Bay's waiting for us in the second round. Like, no matter how good we may look, Tampa Bay is still going to just be waiting for us in the second round.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to jump into number 3, the Washington Capitals. They were playing solid all season long, but within the past few weeks, they have stepped up their game. They are first in the Metro with 98 points, a 3-point lead over both Pittsburgh and the New York Islanders, and are sitting on back-to-back wins. Mind you, Ovechkin leads the league in goals with 49 goals. So this team is, in my opinion, gearing up for another deep run. But any team in the East has to keep Tampa Bay in the back of their mind, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Capitals are 2-2 in games this week. So they had a rough loss to Tampa early on. But as you were saying, they're first in the Metro. And recently they've been playing, giving themselves some insurance to stay in that first place spot. It wouldn't be impossible to see the Pens possibly catch up to them. But for now, they're looking pretty good. The only thing that I would say is the Capitals do have some rough games ahead of them. They're playing the Canes again, which they beat in their last game, but obviously the Canes are looking for some revenge and even to potentially take a seed spot in the playoffs. And then they're going to be playing the Lightning as well. So the Capitals definitely do not have an easy stretch for the rest of their games, but it'll be interesting to see them play these teams because they're definitely going to meet again in the playoffs.
Definitely. So number 4, the Calgary Flames. Just note, this is the 4th team in my rankings, and this is the first team in the Western Conference. Calgary is the first place team in the Western Conference with 101 points and the second best goal differential in the league with a goal differential of plus 55. This team is solid at home with a home record of 25-8-5 and also can win on the road with a away record of 22-14-2. However, they shouldn't need to use that away record at all in the playoffs because they have a decent lead in the Western Conference.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you said at the beginning, it was tough to pick Western Conference teams out for this power ranking. They've all been playing inconsistently lately. I think the main reason Calgary is underneath the Caps is because of that terrible shutout loss to the Kings they had, as well as the Caps obviously winning yesterday. But prior to that loss, they had a +8 goal differential in their last 3 wins against the Blue Jackets, Senators, and Canucks. So not three crazy good teams, but it was surprising to see none of their offensive guys put up any points in that game. But they still have and most likely will keep this firm hold over the Western Conference, so they definitely deserve a high spot in these rankings.
Definitely. And I think it's important to note that they're nothing special in special teams. They have the 14th ranked power play and the 19th ranked penalty kill. However, they have the fewest shots against per game. So that could help them come playoff time. But I do think if they want to make a serious run this year, they need to improve their special teams heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really have anything else on that, so I'm going to hop into number 5, which is the Vegas Golden Knights, 7-2-1 in their past 10. After their shutout victory early on in the week against Winnipeg, they've begun to cool off a little. They dropped 2 straight to the Red Wings and the Blues, but I don't really think that is going to put an axe in their playoff push at all. They're definitely looking good right now. I think their main goal is to just try and keep that home ice, or win that home ice, I should say. And if they get back on the right track, they're definitely gonna pull it out over the Sharks.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can say that Vegas won that trade deadline because since the trade deadline, they're 10-2-1. Like you said, the past few games they have lost a few games. However, I think if Fleury is consistent and is ready to go in playoffs, that's going to be a huge help. And I think if they can catch up to the San Jose Sharks, who have lost 6 games in a row, that would be a huge help because Vegas is not nearly as strong on the road as they are at home. They're 19-18-1 on the road, and they're 23-10-5 at home. So if I'm a Golden Knights fan or a player, I want to see that Vegas team get that second seed so they can have that home ice over San Jose, who is also very good at home, but as of late has been struggling. But number 6 is another Western Conference team, the St. Louis Blues. They made a huge jump in the power rankings this week, but that has to do with their play as of late. They've won 4 games in a row, including a 4-3 win over Tampa Bay and a 3-1 win over the Vegas Golden Knights. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10 games, and I think it's important to note that 5 out of their last 6 games are against non-playoff teams right now, and they're just 2 points behind Nashville in the Central Division and just 4 points behind Winnipeg for first place in that Central Division.
Yeah, St. Louis Blues is not a team that usually makes it to anyone's top 10 power rankings. In fact, earlier on in the season, around November, they were sitting right near dead last. But they've managed to clinch a playoff spot and, like you said, go on that little winning streak. I think most notably, though, they've had 2 wins, or their last 2 wins were against the Capitals and the Golden Knights, which are 2 huge teams to beat. And I also want to bring into the success of their new goalie, Binnington. I believe his record right now is 16-4-1, which I might be a few points off, but still, for a rookie goalie, that is insane. And there's no way you can say that he hasn't been contributing to those wins. Because when you think about the Blues roster, they have a few veteran players, but they don't have a ton of good names when you're looking at the teams next to them in the playoffs.
No, they don't. But number 7 is going to bounce back into the Eastern Conference with the Pittsburgh Penguins. They are currently 2nd in the Metro Division with 95 points and are in a 3-game winning streak, including wins over Nashville, Dallas, and the New York Rangers. They have, however, been facing a few injuries with Malkin, Letang, Mata, Russ, and Aston Reese. If they can somewhat get as much healthier as they can before the playoffs, that is huge for that team. I don't think this Penguins team is a team to be taken lightly because they have won 2 cups with the core of this team. They are 5th in the league on the power play. However, with talking with a lot of Penguins fans as of late, they're a little hesitant about Murray and Net. And the Penguins do have the 4th most shots against per game in the league, averaging 33.4 shots against.
Yeah, and like you said, those injuries that they have are really racking up. I mean, we are starting to see players come back, but it definitely affected them earlier on. Before they went on this nice little winning streak, they were on a 3-game losing streak. So, I mean, their success lately with steadily gaining points is definitely going to help them secure that home ice. I would have to say if it was between them and the Islanders for the second seed, I would definitely say Penguins. And, like we were saying earlier, the Capitals don't have the easiest last 5 or 6 games. So we could see the Penguins potentially sneak into the first seed position.
Exactly. If they keep playing like the Pittsburgh Penguins can play, I don't see why they couldn't sneak into that first seed. Number 8, another Metro team, Carolina. They're 6-4-0 in their last 10, and they are coming off a 4-1 loss to Washington. However, that is the defending champs, and that was in Washington. They are playing Washington again Friday night at home. I expect to see a different game this time. Not necessarily a win for the Carolina Hurricanes, but I think it's going to be a closer game. They do have the 6th best penalty kill, and they have the most shots on goal per game and the 3rd fewest shots against per game.
Yeah, I think how they play against Washington is going to set the tone for the rest of the season and even into the playoffs. We're seeing them right now as a wild card spot, and they'll most likely be able to maintain that position. But I think if they can come together as a team and, like you said, they don't even have to beat the Capitals. As long as they can prove to themselves that they can play well against a serious playoff competitor, I think that momentum will really drive them into the playoffs. And they're lucky because they don't have much trouble winning at home. So home playoff games should be they should feel confident. Their crowds have begun to grow, especially when you look at them historically. The only problem is they have a risky away record, which is kind of rough for a wild card team.
Yeah, that is true because as a wild card team, you're going to have no home ice advantage. So you are going to have to find a way to win on the road. Number 9 is also a wild card team right now and jumping up into the top 10 this week, the Montreal Canadiens. As much of a Bruins fan as I am as a Bostonian, I just feel it belongs that the Canadiens belong in the playoffs as like an organization. So I'm glad to see after a few down seasons, they are making their way back into a playoff spot. In their last 4 games, they're 3-0-1, including a 4-0 win over the Islanders, a 7-4 win over Buffalo, a 2-1 overtime loss to Carolina, and a 6-1 win over Florida. They do have the 3rd most shots on goal per game. However, that doesn't prove to be that effective because they have the worst power play in the league and the 16th ranked penalty kill in the league.
Yeah, I think you really summed up Montreal. That was my reasoning as well, is just making it into that playoff spot. We haven't seen Montreal in the playoffs for a while. Hopefully we do see them this year. Like you said, I mean, there aren't a huge amount of Montreal fans in our area and even throughout the NHL as a whole, but it's definitely interesting to see some new teams in the playoffs. I think you covered that pretty well. I don't really have much more to add. So I'm going to hop into number 10, which is Toronto. They're 4-4-2 in their last 10 games, and I think that is due in part a lot to the fact that their defense has been lacking lately. And while their goalies have slightly improved, I wouldn't say it's something that they should feel confident about at this point going into the playoffs. But their offense is trending upward, which is nice to see. I mean, that game against, I believe it was Florida, they were able to rack up a ton of points. And I think their biggest thing going forward is looking back at their season record. They don't have trouble playing home or away. So even if they stay in that 3rd seed position, we did see them drop to the Bees last year in the playoffs, but I think that it's not going to be a lock. If they go up against the Bees in the playoffs, it's not going to be a lock for the Bees to win. So I think as long as Toronto can start to shore up their back end, it'll be a very competitive matchup.
Definitely. And then just a few little stats that I wanted to mention. They are 2nd in the league on faceoff wins, and we have numerous times gone over how important that is to be good on the faceoffs. They have the seventh ranked power play in the league. And like Kevin said, there's 4-4-2 in the last 10. Their past 3 games, which in my opinion gave me this spot for them, they beat Buffalo 4-2. They lost to the Rangers 2-1 in overtime, which isn't the greatest loss. However, that 7-5 win over Florida proved to me, like Kevin said, they do have an explosive offense. But also, like Kevin said, that defense has been lacking all season long, and their goaltending hasn't been the strongest all season long. And just the fact that Florida put in 5 goals, that has to be a little cause for concern because Florida is eliminated from the playoffs. What is a team that actually is in the playoffs and is on the road to the Stanley Cup going to do? Like, yeah, it's great. You can put 7 goals on a team. But if you put 7 goals on a team, you should be winning by 4 or 5 goals at least, not by 2 goals. But that's going to wrap up the top 10 in the league right now. And I'm sure most of you are saying, what about the Winnipeg Jets? What about the San Jose Sharks? And what about the New York Islanders? All of those teams are serious teams this year that have been in the top 10 all year. But as of late, they have dropped off. The Winnipeg Jets, their last 3 games, they got shut out by the Vegas Golden Knights 5-0. They did beat Nashville 5-0. But Nashville has been hot and cold all season. And yes, they have clinched a playoff spot. They haven't been really consistent that season. And then they have lost to Dallas in their last game 5-2. So Winnipeg has given up some goals as of late. However, Winnipeg is in the playoffs already. It's just how consistent can Winnipeg get when it comes to the playoffs? But Kevin, do you have any thoughts on why we didn't include San Jose in this power rankings?
Yeah, definitely. Just to continue with what you were saying on Winnipeg first, I think that loss to Dallas is really what sealed them out. I mean, it was pretty embarrassing to get shut out by the Golden Knights, a potential playoff competitor with them. But I just think their inability to close against a wild card team is really what put Toronto over them. Going into the Sharks, I just think it's crazy when you look at the San Jose Sharks season and where they're sitting right now in overall rankings that they wouldn't be included in the top 10, but they have lost their last 6 games straight. And honestly, their schedule hasn't even been that difficult. Like, they fell to the Ducks, the Red Wings, the Kings in Florida. Their only 2 difficult teams in those last 6 were Nashville, which, like you said, has been up and down, and then Vegas. So it's just crazy to see. Obviously, Carlson being out is a big factor, but, I mean, when you're looking at the Sharks, you're looking at big name after big name. So I think the fact that one of those guys is injured isn't a good enough excuse for the rest of the team.
No, definitely not. And like we said, Vegas playing hot as of late could very well overtake the Sharks. And in my opinion, if that is a series between the Golden Knights and the Sharks, the home ice advantage could be the deciding factor in that series. Both teams are very strong at home and not necessarily the strongest on the road. But the other team that we didn't include is in the Eastern Conference, the New York Islanders. My main concern with this team is no matter how good they have looked this season, and this season has been an improvement as of late. The Islanders, as of late, have not been that good of an organization. But now they're in a playoff spot right now, 3rd in the Metro. They just cannot win, not even against contenders. For a while, it was they can't win against contenders. But now it's you play against a team that's even in the playoffs, and you're going to lose. They lost 4-0 to Montreal, and then they beat Philadelphia 4-2, who's on the verge of elimination tonight. They beat Arizona 2-0, who is like 2 points out of a wild card spot. And then they go and lose to the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-0, who aren't even in a playoff spot. Like, that can't be a solid outlook right now as an Islanders fan heading into the playoffs.
No, especially to mention the game before Montreal was a 5-0 shutout that the Bruins handed to them. Not to mention that was at Nassau Coliseum. So I know I read it and heard it, so I'm not the first one to say it, but it effectively ended the rumors of how much better they play in Nassau and how they use that Coliseum to their advantage. But it's true, like it's kind of they're in the same boat as the Sharks right now, where if you're looking back at their season as a whole, they're playing very well. But their inability to beat playoff teams as of late is very bad for them.
Very
concerning, yes. Especially since they're only 4 points ahead of the Hurricanes, and they're tied with the Pens right now. So they could lose their seeding altogether if they don't improve.
Exactly. So tonight and Wednesday night hockey, we have 4 games. At 7 o'clock, we have Toronto at Philadelphia. As we said, Toronto is trying to do whatever they can to overtake the Bruins and for that second seed. If the Flyers lose tonight, they are eliminated from playoff contention. Second game is Rangers at Boston. The Rangers have been eliminated from the playoffs. However, Boston is trying to secure that second seed. So in my opinion, if they can win the next few games, that should solidify it. And then you can give a few of your stars a night or two off, which is huge at this point in the season. Third game at 9:30 is Dallas at Calgary. Dallas is a wild card team right now, so they're in a must-win situation for the rest of the season. Calgary is first in the West. They're just trying not to get cold. And then at 10 o'clock, Vegas at Colorado. Colorado is a wild card team right now, like Dallas, in a must-win position to the end of the season. Vegas is trying to overpass San Jose for that home ice advantage in that first series, which could solidify whether or not they go home that first round or whether or not they advance to the second round. Do you have any thoughts on the games tonight, Kevin?
Yeah, I actually have one thought for each game. I think the Bruins need to play consistently this game. I mean, obviously, I don't have any complaints as far as they've been playing lately. They've had a lot of wins. I think they just need to coast through. They're getting Johansson and another name who I can't think of right now coming back to the lineup. So I think they just need to play consistently tonight. Toronto, I would want to see them give up as few goals as possible. I think they need to prove to themselves and their fans that their defense isn't just an open net. And then looking at it from the point of playoff seeded teams, I think Calgary and the Golden Knights, I think they just need to show that they can beat Western Conference playoff teams. So they've been doing really well lately. And it's funny because they've actually been playing pretty evenly against each other. But it would be big to see them beat teams who they could play in the first or second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're at the point in the season with 6 or 7 games left for most teams where every game is a big game. If you're in playoff contention or in a playoff spot, you have to look at how you fare against the opposing team because right now there's a limited amount of days until your season's over.
Yeah, definitely. I think that wraps up what I have to say.
All right, so that sums up this week's episode for my power rankings. Check out the Game Changer and Inside the Ice Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook accounts. They are both listed at the beginning and end of each video. We will be going on another episode, I believe, Monday coming up, discussing some more college hockey. Until then, have a great day, guys, and enjoy some good hockey coming up.